Welcome back, comrades, to Utopian Cartography, for another expedition into the unknown regions of the future, to discover hope, real hope, beyond the illusions handed down to us by previous generations that greed is good and war is inevitable, because there will just never be enough to go around. As George Carlin said, it's all bullshit, folks, and it's bad for you. I'm your host, Neonn Felicity, and I'm here to tell you that we can have a positive future. Our guest on today's voyage is Andru Defeye, conscious existential emcee, founder of the guerrilla performance crew Zero Forbidden Goals, communications director for the community activist art space Soul Collective, and the vibrant host of a series of open mic events at Soul and on street corners around Sacramento. We met at Soul Collective a few years ago when I first started getting active and sharing my ideas in public. His energy hosting the open mics was so inspiring because he breaks down the intimidation factor in getting up there on stage to share a piece of your soul with the world. He models a healthy relationship with performance art and culture in general by sharing his honest poetry with a fun and accessible vibe. In the conversation you're about to hear, we discuss the role of art in raising the vibration of society to expand the presence of love in the culture and push forward the fight for social justice and to collectively manifest joy in our lives, despite the remaining toxicity of our obsolete fear-based instincts to fortify our egos and reject the validity of each other's stories. Along the way, we discuss the woes of popular culture and how the revolution has to start within each of us, and how guerrilla poetry has the capacity to disrupt our complacent apathy and force us to empathize with people who don't share our experiences in life. We explore the immaturity of our society, and how we're still learning to communicate our needs and wants with each other, and how two-way intergenerational learning can really take place by establishing rapport and building trust and figuring out how to really listen to each other, which will dissolve our fears and obsolete the primitive hatreds that pollute our monkey minds. Andru and I discussed the new generation of artists and how they have been exploited by the music industry to push escapism and consumerism, but they're nevertheless coming into a place of self-realization where they now have the social capital to influence their peers in a positive direction. We talk about how the revitalization of urban life can work to end the war between the cops and the community, and how poetry can bridge the divide between people that the old paradigm manufactured to subjugate marginalized populations and fill up private prisons with innocent people of color. Finally, we discuss the ways society is evolving along with its soundtrack, and how each generation takes the wisdom of the previous generation and runs with it to build a new level of collective consciousness. As someone who works with youth, helping them find their voice in this noisy, chaotic world, Andru shares his firsthand knowledge of the exceptional emotional intelligence of the new generation, and how they intuitively understand the poetic nature of reality, and how the radical culture and technologies these kids create will continue to blow our minds as we go forward into this surreal world of the 21st century. So thanks for joining us on this map-making endeavor to envision a path towards a world worth living in. All right, welcome everybody to episode 2 of Utopian Cartography. I'm here with Andru Defeye, the guerrilla poet laureate of Sacramento, bringing the Renaissance back to the streets and cultural revival of the city back into the hands of the people. And
that's incredibly kind. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I see you as performing a crucial service to the community, because Sacramento is undergoing this Renaissance right now. I watch a lot of TED Talks, and I feel like every big city in the world is undergoing this cultural renaissance, and it's like there's a struggle to like, how do we prevent that from just being gentrification, and how do we keep it in the hands of the people who live in the cities that are being reborn? And so I feel like things like guerrilla poetry and throwing events, like that's the origins of hip hop. That's like where this whole thing started, like where the people can have art. That's not necessarily just going to a corporate, everybody begging a corporation to let them publish their shit.
Right. Doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm, sure. Exactly. The DIY revolution is definitely at the heart of utopia as I see it. And so I guess we could start off by talking a little bit about the philosophy behind your work and focusing on art as a way of responding to the injustices in the world and the troubling aspects of the way things seem to possibly be headed. And
I think a big part of my work is based in disruption. That's at the core, and it's disruption out of a place of love, but disruption for sure of the everyday, the mundane, because there's a normalcy that draws people into complacence and not thinking, not critically thinking, or not becoming unaware, becoming numb to the connection between us as people. And I think, that's part of my path in life, and why I'm here is to really draw that connection out of people and disrupt some of that complacency and that normalcy. We talk about forced empathy. Is something I've been talking a lot about lately when I talk about ZFG, and like what we've been trying to do for the last few years is like, you know, I do believe in forced empathy, you know, as a tactic to create change, because until there's an understanding of where other people have been, then there can't be a communication. There isn't a connection. That's where the disconnection happens, is because people are in different places and can't really empathize. So a lot of the guerrilla poetry stuff comes with that intention of like, you know, how do we establish a connection by forcing a little bit of empathy? You know, let's run up in some spots that like people aren't used to these perspectives and bring some of those perspectives right to the front of their faces. And if it's a little uncomfortable, that's okay, because growth is uncomfortable, like by nature almost, you know? So yeah, that's my philosophy. Forced empathy and disruption.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because yeah, the system thrives and perpetuates itself based on forcing apathy down our throats.
Yeah,
they play the same song on the radio that has no substance, so that we just get trained into these ways of thinking that don't you know, push society forward at all. So we don't grow.
Yeah, and I mean, even a lot of the music is. I'm not even here to like content on good, bad, positive, negative, but it's very self-centric. So the music is I'm doing good. I'm living my best life. I'm in the club. I'm at the peak of my game. I'm winning at capitalism. Like whatever it is, it's I. It's I. Everything goes back to I, and it's really that I think that I'm fighting against more so than like, you know, I feel like a lot of shit isn't right or wrong. You know what I mean? Like. Or it's not for me to say what is right or wrong, but just to really build on that connection between people as individuals, to realize like we are all connected. And once we realize that we're all connected, then, you know, we can actually have peace. We can actually like start moving towards a utopia. But until everyone realizes like you're connected to everyone else, that person that you have hatred in your heart for, like you're still connected to that person. I'm connected to my enemies. I'm connected to those who hate me. I'm connected, you know what I mean? Like, so really, once you put it in that perspective and you really internalize that, then it makes how you deal with the outside world a little differently, you know?
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yep. It's because it's divide and conquer. That's part of why we stay fucked, because we're just all these little atomized consumers that they can just push around because we don't got power, because we're just individuals, and you know, we don't got money. Like, so all we got's our voices. And so like they've like, it's almost like the corporatization of culture, like over the past 100 years has been this process of like making it feel like we're not in this together, like where there's, you know, like the whole rock star paradigm of like there's just a, you know, a handful of people, this whole idea that there's just a handful of people that got it, you know, and everybody else, we're just here to listen and consume like the narratives that they're churning out.
No, absolutely. It's individualization.
Yeah, exactly. So people figure like, oh, I just got to go get a minimum wage job because, you know, I don't have that spark or whatever. So
yeah. And in that, like, look at themselves as less valuable than the person who is on stage selling 1 million records, whatever the case may be. Just seeing themselves, I'm a minimum wage, so that means I'm a minimum person. I'm worth the minimum that society is willing to offer, and it creates this narrative within like working class people that's just false, where it's like, yo, y'all really like the rock star makes $1 million to try and eat, to live in a mansion. Who builds the mansion? Who cooks the food? Who grows the food? Like, he ain't gonna be able to do shit with 1 million pieces of paper if y'all aren't here creating it. So it's interesting when it's, you know, we do, you know, you just said like, we don't have money. I may not have money. You may not have money. But we, as a collective, as the people, like, we have money. We can shut any of this shit down anytime that we wanted to. If we just said, nah, we're not playing. Okay, you guys got $1 billion in the bank. Well, no one's gonna make you food. No one's gonna, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so eat your money, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely is like there is a narrative that is perpetuated. Not gonna like, there's,
Right.
you know, some evil men like scheming in the, but there are.
There's a couple of those.
there are, there definitely are, you know? But I think it's a lot of ourselves, you know, like they just expose a weakness and then we take that shit and run with it. And then we impose it on other people. Because if I'm making $2 over the minimum wage doing some shit, but I feel like I should be worth more, but I'm not, so I'm devaluing myself and I feel negatively about myself, then I do, like, I might look at someone who is making minimum wage and be like, shit, at least I'm doing better than you. At least I'm worth more than you. And then it, like, this idea that everyone has this worth and this value in society and that everyone doesn't have the same value in society is a kind of weird one. You know, if you've ever had a conversation with anyone in your life, then you understand, like, everyone's got something to teach and everyone's got something to learn. And like society as a whole doesn't function if everyone's not, you know, doing what fulfills them.
Right. Yeah. I remember back in the day when I had my real pessimistic little phase there, where I was like, when I first got into conspiracy theory and first like learned about the idea that there's some people making decisions back there that don't have the good of society in mind. I like back in the day. I remember, you know, Alex Jones talking. I used to be into Alex Jones for a minute, and I remember him talking about how, like, you know, like they're just gonna eliminate 90% of the population. And I remember it being like, okay, well, for a long time that seemed like, okay, maybe they don't need us anymore. Maybe when all the jobs, you know, get automated, they guess they just don't need us. They won't. But then after a while, I started to be like, well, what would the reality really be like without us to create all the culture, all the shit that makes life valuable? Like, we're like, the people are creating that. And so like that was a big thing that made me be like, oh wait, they wouldn't have a reason to, you know, like, it's like we're creating all the stuff that they are living these luxury lifestyles based on.
No, exactly. Who's gonna work the hotels?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Who's gonna play the shows? Like,
who's gonna manicure your lawns? You know, like any of that shit. Like, it's an interesting thought.
And like, art is a huge part of like what I feel like makes life like beautiful. I mean, at the essence of it, I mean, obviously nature is beautiful too, but there's an extent to which like the connection that we can get to each other, into each other's minds. Like in this chapter I'm writing, I was just describing how the whole entire purpose of art is to basically to externalize the internal models of the world that we've built up by our own experience, and to try to compare them to each other. So we learn from each other by like observing each other, you know, by listening and looking at each other's expressions of how we experience the world. And so we each grow, you know, from seeing, you know, from internalizing the externalized internal worlds of other people.
Right.
And so it seems like that's like part of the beauty of being human, like, really.
That's part of the expansion. I think like art is there to evoke, for me, like the purpose of art is to evoke a feeling of some sort, like whether it's, you know, and that is, I can't evoke a feeling in someone else or I can't put a feeling into my art that I haven't felt, right? It's like impossible to do. Even if like, well, what about like rappers that talk about killing people and they've never even held a gun? Like, they've still felt that feeling. You can watch a gangster ass, you can watch The Godfather and feel that feeling. So yeah, it's interesting how just the reflections of each other that we are, and how we like, it's a process of not viewing yourself as how other people view you. Like, you know, I went through that a lot over the last couple of years to really like, you know, there's Andru Defeye, the community organizer that people know and that people love. And like, it was really easy for me to love about myself what other people loved about me. I didn't necessarily love myself. I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like I still had a lot of work to do on that part. And it's helpful to have other people show you that reflection. But at the end of the day, like that's where that's where I feel like utopia really lies, right? Like we can talk about the external world all day, but like self-love and self-acceptance, until, like, that's really the first step, because we can't change this external shit until everybody gets into that space of like, yo, I love myself, therefore I don't fear other people who aren't like me, therefore I don't fear things that are not influencing my reality. You know, I know where those lines are, because I know myself. So clearly I know where myself's like kingdom is, and I don't need to step out. I don't worry about what's going on outside of where the light touches. You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, I think that's the revolution, utopia, all of these ideas all start from within, and it's like a really cliche thing to say, but the older I get, the more truth I really find in it.
Yeah, definitely. Me too, for sure. Yeah. And that's why I focus so much on culture. That insight that, you know, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world, and today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. Or that insight is like that's kind of why I focus on culture so much. Like, and I'm writing this techno-utopian manifesto, but a lot of it is focused on culture and story and and art and the narratives that are actually the substance of the lives the world we experience. Because it's like the technological evolution is it's happening, and so it's a matter of like because there's a lot of dystopian science fiction where the abundant technology is there, but the social relations haven't transformed. And so it's like this cold, terrible place that you know, like it's obviously you wouldn't want to live there, even though they've like, you know, managed all this super advanced technology. So my whole big part of my project is like, how do we avoid that? You know, like how does this technology not all lead us to a terrible place?
Yeah. And even in that idea, there's like the realization of human nature to like take shit to a negative place, like manifesting some of this negative shit. Like the law of attraction is a universal law. Like this isn't, you know, it's not really up for debate. Like whether you buy into it, whether you don't, it's just how it works. So, you know, we stay focused on a lot of that. Which I think that's part of that paradigm shift. I think people are starting to really realize what that, if you want to change the world, change yourself really means. You know, like, just that your reality is exactly that, your reality. And people are kind of waking up to within my reality, right? Like, so I live in this house, and if my kitchen gets really messy, I can walk into another room. If I need to work, or if I want to sit in a clean space, I can walk into another room. And that's like, you know, kind of like our worlds of like, yo, there may be politically something messy going on over here. I don't have to spend time in that if I don't want to. Like, just focus wise. I'm not saying you deny that it exists. I'm not saying like there's a line for me, I feel like, and it's that like spirit realm line of like, yo, I'm not, privilege is over here saying that this doesn't exist. Manifestation is over here saying I'm going to put my focus on the positive, right? It's saying that when these travesties and these horrendous things happen and I'm involved in them, I do focus on them, but I try to stay focused on the beauty of the way human beings come together around tragedy. Some of those stories, if that's where I maintain my focus, then that's what I see more of. That's what I manifest more of in my personal spiritual beliefs, right? Like, so I think there is, you know, a lot of times I think manifesting shit gets put into that privileged category, and they're privileged ass people who really don't understand the difference and the nuances of these things. You know, it's not denying the reality of things. It's being very conscious of where you put your focus within your consciousness.
Right. Totally. Yeah, because like that's a big part of this transition is that we're finding out about all the things that have been going wrong for as long as civilization's been going down. There's been police brutality for 5,000 years. And it's only now that we got cameras
right, right.
And
And like, I mean, it's a weird thing because you kind of have to look at it through a universal perspective of like, as we sit here in this moment, in this current moment now, as you and I in these physical bodies, 500 years feels like a long fucking time. Universally, the human species like growing and growing into what we're going to become, like that's less than a blink of an eye, right? Like, so, and I feel like all of it, when you do take a universal perspective, like every battle, that's how you learn things. And this is the process of, I try to get as far up as I can and see the forest as much as I can instead of searching out the trees individually, and that helps to keep the mental health, you know what I mean? Because I think if you focus on these incidents, there's a new one every day.
right.
You know what I mean? There's something new to be like heartbroken about every day. But there's also a whole uprise against that. There's a whole like group of human beings that are like, no, 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 this is not going to be that. And all of that is like erosion, and it like shapes what's going to be this grand canyon of humanity. Like, so I think just within the confines of creating your own utopian mind state to create that utopia outside and externally, like that's probably the most crucial point, is to be able to look at it as like, that's what it is. It's all expansion. It's all expansion. We got ugly ass parts of it. We got beautiful ass parts of it. And everyone plays a role in it. That's what's tight. Like,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and the thing of now we got cameras that enables us to then be like, look, this is the reality, and then tell our story and with evidence. And so that's how we can coalesce and build these movements now in a way that, like, it still boggles my mind that, like, in the civil rights era, they were mobilizing tens of thousands of people for marches. They don't have no internet. Like, right. I don't even get it.
Right. Yeah. And I think, in a lot of ways, the internet has made us more apathetic as people. And, like, I think it satiates a little bit of need in people to be active, where, there is a cross section of the world who thinks that making a Facebook post is activism, and that, like, you're creating change. And while you may bring a point to someone's mind, you may be, I'm not even going to invalidate that as like a positive way to make change. But there's a lot of other options right now too, right? Where like that was like what they had back then. That's how you protest. It was like there's this action, this is happening, like, and being out on the streets. And I think there's a lot of folks who also protest off the streets. There's a lot of other movements. There's a lot of social justice work going on. There's a lot of nonprofits sparking up. The Trump era is about to kick off the biggest wave of nonprofits. Like, once this dude is out of office, there's going to be set up for folks, because there's going to have been so many people that were like coming to the aid of people who were under attack, marginalized communities. Like, so, that, like, again, it's this like back and forth, you can look and be like, yo, it released this uprising of racism, but did it just unveil it? And isn't that a good thing? Isn't it, like, it sucks that we're constantly bombarded with it, and then like there's a new video of someone being fucking racist every day, but it's kind of dope that we all know who's with us and who's against us, you know what I mean, in the fight for marginalized people and marginalized communities, like, so there's like good to be seen in all of it. It's really about like where you put your focus.
Exactly. Because then when we do that work, then it's real. Like, because like during Obama, like, it was almost like, I feel like all these people who, now under the Trump era have come out, they're just openly racist now. Like, they were all just, they were talking that shit, like, but they they couldn't say it out loud. So it was like this, it was like this fake. That's part of my thing with PC culture, is because I feel like sometimes it gets in the way of actually resolving the biases and bigotry in people's minds, because it's just like
it hides them.
Yeah, exactly. There's like, okay, I just can't say this thing, but they are changed. Their mind hasn't been changed.
it's okay for me to think this thing. I just can't say it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, and that's, again, that's why it's beautiful. That's why it's great that he's in there doing all this fuck shit that he's doing. Like,
Right.
um,
Because it's caused us to make the argument for why immigrants aren't scary or a problem. Because before it was just like, it was just taboo to express that sort of thing. But now that they're like, yeah, immigrants are bad, we need to keep them out. So it's like, it's caused people like me to, like, I wrote a chapter in my book on open borders. Like, I don't know if I would have explicitly wrote the whole 15 pages on why we should open our borders if we hadn't had this fascist in office talking about closing the borders harder.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's inspired a lot of things, a lot of action. We used to joke as Soul Collective, the mission statement, the tagline, everything is art, culture, activism. And we used to joke that it was art, culture, activism. And in the Trump era, like, it's become a lot less like that. You know, like, we've been getting hit up by a bunch of the folks who are like, yo, we want to start up something, we want to do something, like, we know you guys have been doing this work. And it was like, yo, you kind of did have to, like, be cautious when you were doing this work, you know what I mean? Because there wasn't, you know, people didn't necessarily understand exactly what the work was or why it was so important to do some of this work. And a lot of this was to, like, get ready for some shit like this guy in office, you know? So yeah, man, it's an interesting time that we live in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably, like, the most important time. You know what I mean? I feel like we're really at that paradigm where either we are gonna figure some things out and power is gonna be wielded to the next generation. And I mean, that's just universally, that's what's gonna happen. But I'm interested to see the path of this country that I'm in while that paradigm happens, and how much blood there's gonna have to be. That's not something that I'm personally excited for. You know what I mean? I'm not that kind of warrior these days. But there's a lot of question. You know, how do we make change unless it is like this radical, like, I mean, I don't know if there's another word other than violence. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sitting here saying I endorse violence, but, like, you know, I don't know that real radical change comes without some from somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yep. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make it inevitable. And, like, that's what they're talking about in Venezuela right now. They're, like, on the verge of a civil war because of this coup that the U.S. is backing, and so that's why when people talk about impeaching Donald Trump, I'm just like, dude, you don't know, like, what kind of shit that could, you know, what kind of, you know, like, they got guns and he's got a cult, an armed cult.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of potential. Like, we're a powder keg. America is a full-on powder keg right now, and everyone is highly emotional on all sides. There's a severe lack of communication because, I mean, how many folks do you know that have been like, if you're a Trump supporter, get off my social media?
I've seen that.
You know, I delete folks. You know what I mean? Like, and again, preserve your mental health by all means. If you got to delete motherfuckers, delete motherfuckers. But it gives to more misunderstandings and a lack of communication. Not to say that folks who support this dude don't have major issues, and there's not a whole lot, like, wrong with what he's doing and the people that are supporting it. But there's a lot of different people in the world. Everybody come from a different place. Everybody's got different experiences. We are all the sum of our experiences. And I just don't know that it's, I mean, everything's conducive to change because the universe is always changing, you know what I mean? So whether it's like a peaceful thing, a violent thing, you know, it is conducive to change, I guess, in that way. But I don't know that it's conducive to peaceful change or to understanding or that connection. Again, it's like more disconnection. This country's never been more disconnected than this. Like, I don't know that, like, the Civil War was, like, more disconnected than it is right now. Like, so, you know, how do we maintain connection? How do we maintain love? Because, again, we're all in the same boat. It doesn't, like, if one side of the boat stops paddling and we just spin in a fucking circle and everybody goes, like, everybody starves to death in the middle of the fucking ocean. You know what I mean? Like, So if we're all in this country, then we've all got to figure out some line, and that's what we're doing. America's baby. America's young. We're like maybe a preteen right now. Like that's the growth spurt that we're going through, you know. Um, so I think again that universal and that historic perspective of like, you know, of course we're trying to iron a bunch of shit out. You know, when you preteens, you remember being 13 years old, like that shit sucked. You didn't know who you were.
Right.
You had what people told you were, and then what you felt, and you didn't know which way. Like you didn't even know if it was okay for you to feel the way that you felt. Like, and I feel like that's just America as a whole right now. Like, you know, I come from my father's a minister. My family's very religious, very Christian, and based in love. Like my parents taught me a lot that I know about love. I learned unconditional love in the church, and from them. But
yeah, me too. I think actually,
you know, like, and so it's like where even they nowadays, right, are, you know, I remember being young and like being gay was that like straight up sin,
right.
going to hell, no tolerance, like none of it. And now, you know, I talked to my mom's and my sister's best friend is gay, and my mom loves this kid, and like just, you know, and like at a certain point it's like, yo, do you still believe his eternal soul is going to hell? Like, and I don't know that she does, you know what I mean? I think there's an entire paradigm shift, and I think it bleeds in whether you have a previous religious practice or not. The space in the universe that our solar system is going into is a new vibrational space, so it's hitting everyone in this way. And it, you know, speaking energetically, shit moves like magnets. So when you move into a new energetic space, you're either going to be up or you're going to go down. You're going to be attracted or you're going to be, you know, detracted. So yeah, I think that's really like what's going on, and you can see it around. It's a wild energy because of that. Like people are still trying to figure out, like, am I gonna raise my vibration to like meet this, or am I gonna like be propelled by this high vibration a little bit lower, you know?
Right, totally. I love that, definitely. And that's the struggle with doing philosophy, doing politics. I feel like that reminds me of the like instinct people have to dig in their heels when they're shown contradictory information to what they already believe. That's like the cognitive dissonance either forces them to, you know, their paradigm to be shattered and then them to move on to, you know, to abandon that false concept, or to be like, oh no, just completely reject the new information that's being presented and be like, oh no, I must have been even more right than I realized I was.
Yeah. We attach a lot of ourselves to our experiences, and our senses, as it would be. So there's definitely like that inclination, you know. I'm as bad as anyone on the face of this earth about that. Like, no, I was right about that. No, there's not. And then someone will bring the whole other like side of it, and I'm like, yo, that. Nah, man, fuck that. Like, give me 3 days. Let me sit on that. Like,
Right.
I need to like calm my ego down and like get myself out of the situation in order to like really be open to some other ideas. You know.
Right.
Human condition, man. It's wild. It's wild. That's why we do the work.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I don't know if it's just because I'm a philosopher or what, but I tend to my experience of the human condition is I tried it so hard to question. I'm like constantly questioning myself. So I was just like, I always wonder like how much everybody else is questioning themselves. And I know like there's like, I know this a lot of people have social anxiety now. I feel like that's like becoming a more and more common phenomenon, and I feel like that has to do with the like self-questioning of like the. I mean, and that also has to do with the fact that the consumer economy is based on us feeling insufficient and invalid, so we got to go purchase stuff. And so I feel like that's part of what gives some of that anxiety of like that we're going to be judged by some, you know, metrics that we don't even care about. But, you know, the fact that we're getting judged is, so that's why part of why it's so hard to like talk about privilege with people. Like, part of the essence of privilege is that you don't experience it.
Yeah.
It's something that it's a negative thing that you don't experience.
Yeah.
That's the privilege. So it's hard. So it's hard to perceive, and it's easy to be, oh nah, man, I'm poor too. Like, they got privilege. Like,
that's where forced empathy comes in.
right.
I think, I ask the most questions when I don't have answers, and I think that's like social anxiety, like where that comes from is people not having those answers, in the fashion of not fulfilling their purpose, or not feeling like they have a purpose. If you're spending 8 hours a day making someone else's dream come true, and worried about your finances, worried how you're gonna live, worried about all of this, then why wouldn't you be anxious? Like, what's not, you're literally watching hours of your life tick away that aren't yours. And like, as a human being, we all know that you only have so many of those. Like, so of course it's the depression is on the rise, the social anxiety is on the rise, all of these things, because people, like, that's because you have all questions and no answers. Like, and that's where, like, I'm constantly questioning myself. Again, when I don't have answers, I question myself. Some moments I'm connected clearly to the divine, where I'm just like, I got no motherfucking questions right now. I got answers like a motherfucker right now. Like,
Right.
And that's like the goal through spiritual practice. But, like, I think also your answers come through asking questions. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think everyone does question themselves, and that's how you get answers.
Right.
Like, I know for sure. And it's how you come up with the ability to give an answer. Like, even your own, like, am I strong enough, smart enough, talented enough to do this? You know what I mean? This thing that I want to do. And then, like, through asking that fucking question, you're gonna find the answer, like whether it's a yes or a no.
Right.
And then be able to give yourself the answer that you want eventually, by being like, okay, I can't do it right now, but why couldn't I do it?
Right.
Okay, change that. The answer is yes now. But yeah, for sure. And I think as a creative, that's like definitely part of the process. I don't know anyone who questions themselves more than creatives. And it's weird because society kind of gives to it. Because in their mind, right, like, the plumber comes in because the toilet doesn't work. He fixes the toilet, then he did his job. He succeeded. He met his objective. Where, like, the creative, it's like, you wrote a book.
Right.
What is the objective of it? Were you trying to sell 1 million copies? Were you trying to change people's lives? Were you trying to just put a book out there into history? Like, there's a lot of things that could be success. That's why part of the creative process early on, when I work with young artists, I tell them, you have to define what success looks like for you. You can't, because otherwise that's when other people start telling you what success is. That's when, I know folks who did 10 years in the music industry and had a lot of fun, made a lot of records that they love, like made a bunch of stuff they were really proud of. But at the end of it, felt miserable that they never made it, or they never launched a label, or they never, whatever, like, that someone else was like, yo, you should be this. By the time you're 30 years old in hip hop, you should be this, and you should have made this much money. And it's like, yo, like, how valuable is some of that really, like, so I think just as creatives, we really do have to set success for ourselves and really hold ourselves to that standard, and not let other people's shit get in the way. Yeah, define what success looks for you, if you create anything, because I mean, the thing is that the fucking toilet could break in 3 days. Something else could go wrong with the toilet. Like, that dude's job wasn't done. He didn't succeed any more than you did as a creative. You know what I mean? Like, he created a solution to this problem for this moment, which is kind of what we're trying to do as creatives. Right? Totally. Like, even whether the problem is Like even your own self-esteem, hip hop is like built in that shit.
Right.
Like fix your own self-esteem by putting on this beat and talking about how you're better at rapping than everyone else, how you have more money, how you pull up cleaner, how you fuck prettier women, like all of it, all of it. So it is still, and it's recognizing that in it too. You know, that's one of those like bigger picture focuses where it's real easy to listen to some of this shit and be like, yo, what are y'all doing right now with this music? Like, I know a lot of old heads that feel like hip hop is corrupted now and just shit on the new generation. And I think it's kind of foul because I think this generation is just a little more unabridged than y'all were. Like then and they've pushed the limit to be. They've earned the fucking right to be as unabridged as they are. And it's the same, really, it's the same basic concept of they're just talking about what they got as a means to like propel themselves and their own self-esteem up. Like, and folks listen to it vicariously. That's the power of hip hop, is that this one dude was sitting in the studio. He feels like shit about himself deep down, but he got a bunch of gold chains on and he's doing all that. He's got money now. Someone gave him some money. So he starts rapping about what he's doing with all this money. Number one, he starts feeling better and he starts realizing his own value through this process. And then everyone who's listening to it, I'm riding around to it like, yeah, I'm moving in I'm driving in a fucking 1991 Toyota Charger or some shit. I don't even know if a Toyota is a Charger. That shows my car shit. But like I'm rolling around in whatever I'm whipping in and I'm feeling like I'm pushing the bins and I feel good about myself and I can channel that feeling. And I think for me, I think that feeling some shit like that helps you manifest it. You know, there's a poem that I wrote called The Lil Wayne Affirmation that goes, cash money millionaires weren't that when they named themselves. And like these folks like literally like didn't have it. They named themselves cash money millionaires. And all of a sudden, like they said it so many times. They felt it so many times. They made so many records about having millions. The motherfuckers got millions now. That's law of attraction right there. Like real talk. So yeah, man. Power of hip hop.
Definitely. But one thing on that, I get that aspect of what you're saying, but there's a part of it for me that like I always feel like they're bragging. Maybe it's just because maybe it's because I got a cynical perspective, but I'm always like, fuck you, motherfucker. Either you do got it and fuck you for showing it off to me and making me remind me that I don't got it, or you're lying and then that almost makes it even worse.
Right. Well, and that's really like that how you choose to place your focus, because I definitely choose to look at lying about having some shit in that scenario. In that scenario, these young people who don't come from shit.
Yeah, that's the other part.
Like, you know, like when the young kid starts rapping at 15, 16 years old because he wants shit. So they start rapping about how they're pushing the bins. They start rapping about how they got gold in their mouth, but they don't really have that shit. That's really just them trying to manifest that shit, trying to relate to it. What they see in it is, they know when I listen to this record by 2 Chainz, right? It gives me this feeling. That feeling feels good. How do I make something that makes me feel good? And that's what they're doing at that moment. They may not even know that they're manifesting $1 million. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not to say there's not resistance in the way of that, and there's not like a whole lot of other shit that plays in. Obviously, not everybody who starts rapping at 15 years old gets fucking $1 million. But there is.
There's a lot of kids with 100 followers saying, I got this and that.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think a lot of that is self-examination has to come with that too. Where I think there are people who, man, when Jay-Z started, these folks dressed Jay-Z to the part. He didn't own these cars. He didn't, none of that. It was to establish this like persona, because that was what was going to propel these records. So there's a part of it that, like, if you're going into it marketing wise and you're conscious of what you're doing, then you're manifesting some shit. That counts as manifestation to me. If you are just out here fronting, on some shit, and it's not a conscious decision. If you haven't gone through the self-awareness to be like, yo, I don't actually have any of this shit right now. Should I be rapping about this shit right now? Why would I rap about this right now? Why do I want to rap about this right now? And it's okay if you got an answer to that question that is okay with you and makes you feel good, then fuck it, go with it. You know what I mean? But be self-aware enough to have asked the question. A lot of these young kids are just regurgitating. And the part of that is, as someone who works with young artists and young people, one of my favorite stories about working at Soul, I had this 15-year-old kid who came in. He said, I want to record this song. He did this song. Said, this is a love song for my side bitch. I say, yo, you are 15 years old. Like, number one, just, I mean, with all due respect, you don't know shit about love. And you sure as fuck don't know anything about a side bitch. Like, so let's have a conversation. You know what I mean? Like, where did this inspiration come from? Where did this, you know what I mean? Like, and then really having these conversations where it was like, yo, so you want to have a family and get married someday? Yeah. Okay, so what kind of woman do you see that being? Well, she's got this trait, and she's got this trait, and she's got this trait. Well, man, she sounds like a hell of a woman. That sounds like a queen right there. Yeah, definitely. You know, a queen like Stell, or like Hasmin, like Dia, like any of the women you see around Soul Collective, you know, that you know personally. How you think any of them will react to being called a side bitch? I dare you. You know what I mean? Like, and then just, but it's that empathy where like this kid just knew that he'd been listening. He was probably raised on fucking Too Short. You know what I mean? So that's like what you call women. He didn't understand the implications of that and the spells that he was casting, you know? So there has to be, but again, had I just shut him down and been like, hey, don't be calling women bitches. What are you, ignorant? Like this 2015, whatever fucking year it was, you know what I mean? Like that, that wouldn't have worked. He wouldn't have listened. He would have been like, all right, I'm done listening to that dude about rap music. He doesn't know shit. You know what I mean? Like, where if I'm able to ask a young person a bunch of questions about where that comes from, and then they start critically thinking in order to answer my questions. Like, that's the part, man, this year, this last year, I really figured out that, like, and there's a line to it, but rather than attacking folks and like trying to like make folks feel dumb or put them on guard, when I see some shit on the internet that I'm like, yo, that's a questionable ass statement right there. I ask the question. Let me ask you, why do you feel like that? Where does that come from? How do you think this affects that? And then they have to critically think. I had that happen the first day that I was like, okay, I'm not gonna yell at this person. I'm gonna try another route. I asked 3 questions, and whatever the argument was, switched up completely. Where this person was like, actually, you know, I don't know that I do believe that. Now that I've thought about it, like it might be. I didn't ever say I disagree with you. All I said was why. You know, and I think that's like the most valuable weapon in this fight for utopia, this fight for a better world, is like asking questions, ask people questions, because then not only will they understand, you will understand. Everyone gains understanding when you're asking questions, versus, you know, imagine if we sat down on the opposite sides of the protest lines between the Trump supporters and Antifa and actually asked some questions. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are some of y'all that actually coexist in everyday basis. Like, you work at Jiffy Lube and you needed a fucking oil change, and you walked in and y'all had an interaction because both of y'all were having a good day and both of you enjoyed your families that morning, that put you in a positive place. And if you asked both of you about each other after you left the fucking Jiffy Lube because no one talked about politics, you would say that each other were good people. You know what I mean? So like figuring out those, like how do you continuously ask questions? How do we, you know, because that is to say, like, obviously, I only met you at fucking Jiffy Lube for a 10-minute interaction. You could have a whole lot of other things that I do disagree with. But, you know, just giving folks the opportunity to feel heard
Right.
is so crucial. Even if they're wrong, people won't
Right.
listen to you tell you they're wrong
Right.
unless they feel heard, for sure.
Right.
Like if there's any chance
Right.
for them to listen to you whatsoever, it's gonna be because there's some rapport, there's some, you know, when people interrogate like suspects and shit, like they establish a rapport.
Right. Totally.
So like
That's a great point.
we as humans have to like establish a rapport that's like, yo, at very least, right? Like if you have kids, I don't care who you fucking support. I want your kids to be safe and healthy and happy and grow up in like a world that believes in them and that, you know, like
Right.
cultivates them. I want you to be safe. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be happy and find joy. Like on a all across unconditional fucking basis, just because you're a person.
Right.
Just because we share similar atoms and like share a time and space together. I want that for you. And I think just if everybody operated even just on that basic frequency, the way that the world would be different.
Mm-hmm. And that's real democracy. Like that's how democracy really works. It's like us talking to each other about shit in a way that's not a constant fucking battle. Like like Nietzsche called it agonistic politics. It's like it's like, and that it doesn't get anywhere because everybody's just in their stance, you know, in their battle stance. Warlike postures.
And no one listening.
Right.
I used to do a lot of cocaine in my early 20s, and I've sat in rooms where everyone was talking and
right.
You know what I mean? And that's like, it's what got me sober. You know what I mean? Like, so it's the same kind of thing where totally. Like we do need to listen, even just to gain understanding and not be. Here's the thing: is I know what my stance is on shit to the point where I have no fear that watching an alt-right documentary is going to make me shift how I feel about some shit. Right. You know what I mean? Like for better or worse, I'm very like, I know how I feel about things. Right. You know what I mean? Like, but I do want the understanding of where is this mentality coming from? Like what is the fear that's driving their movement? Right. And then how do we address that fear to be like, yo, actually y'all, like you guys are just clearly not looking at history. Like no one is taking your job. These are jobs that y'all are fucking like not trying to do. And you're trying to actually enslave other people to do them. Like you're the problem here. You know what I mean? Like, but if you don't know that that's like the big thing that's driving this fear and driving these hateful actions, anything hateful is going to be driven by fear. Right. So figure out what the fear is. Right. And then maybe we can work on addressing some of that in ways and opening people's eyes to the fact that most of these fears, most human fears, period, not like, let me broaden it from like that one subject to like most human fears aren't based in anything. Right. Like, right. Exactly. A lot of it's necessary, like self-imposed. Right. Self-imposed prisons and shit. Like, right. Exactly. Yeah, a lot of it's based on ignorance because we fear the unknown. So shit we don't understand. Like it's like, oh, and you know, evolutionarily it would have made it make sense that was selected for because you know better to err on the side of it being a threat. Yeah. Than not the classic example of hearing a rustle in the tall grass, you know, like better just assume that's a fucking lion. Yeah. And I think that's the paradigm that we talk about, like the planet going through and humanity going through is like realizing that some of these primal instincts aren't serving us anymore and letting them go. Like evolutionarily speaking, like that's part of the DNA, but like we're also doing a whole bunch of like DNA code work right now to be like, no, we don't need that. We don't need that. Right. Like it's time to evolve. And like that is like that next evolution of like human consciousness, that paradigm shift of like, you know, you don't necessarily like now we don't need to be so fearful of this shit. Are you kidding me? We are the biggest predator out here. Right. You know what I mean? Like if it wasn't for us, we would never fucking die. You know what I mean? We could be immortal out here, like if we all wanted to focus on some shit, you know? Right. So it's just that realization that fear is self-imposed, and just fucking letting it go.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, there's no reason for it.
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of dystopian concepts, a lot of dystopian science fiction are based on where the advanced technology has been used to basically codify and instantiate the reaction to that fear. It's like to build that fear into the technology. So like the whole idea of, it's like the fucking Democrats being like, oh no, we don't need to build you a concrete wall. We'll build you a smart wall with all these drones and shit. And I'm just like, okay, so you called the Trump's wall immoral, but then you're gonna counter and be like, oh no, we'll just do a technological version that accomplishes the same function, shutting down the fucking country. Like, and it's like, I feel like that's dystopia to me, is like that our where our freedom is constantly, is like ratcheted down on, because we can't, because we, in the event that we fail to overcome our fears,
Right.
of the other, of whatever, you know, the social credit score thing in China, where like everybody just gets a number for everything, you know, like, and that's like the technology being like watching everybody's every move. And
It's 1984 is hella real.
right, exactly.
I forget who it was that said it, but it was like, you know, the only part Orwell got wrong was that like we'd be filming ourselves.
Right.
We'd be holding the fucking telescreens and posting and shit. Like,
Right.
really a fucking time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't dabble too much in technology. I got a couple folks in my life who do, that were talking about how, you know, I was doing a lot of real focus on, you know, the historical systemic oppression and racism in this country. And I was talking to a homie of mine who does tech, and he said, Andrew, you need to stop fucking worrying about the last 200 years, because right now, in this very moment, there are biases being built in to like these smart technologies. You know what I mean? This artificial intelligence has, like, these biases are being built into it, that then the programs to succeed them are built off of this program, are built off of this intelligence and this algorithm. So like right now, at the creation point of some of this technology, like there needs to be a really focused effort on behalf of the people that says this needs to be equitable technology. There needs, like, I need people, like I need equitable boards on all of these like corporations, like all of how many like scientists from every background do you have? Like I want qualifications on that shit for you to even be doing this research, that someone, like, that there was representation in the room of the entire human race. Because right now y'all are building biased technology, and you're building foundational cornerstones of what's going to be for the next 10,000 years,
right,
if humanity survives that long. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so
the fucking RoboCops will be just as racist as the human cops.
Yeah, and that's
you feed it all the data that's been racially skewed.
Yeah.
Over all these decades of gathering data.
Yeah, and then you got racist ass RoboCops. It's like it's super real. Like, so, you know, I think that is definitely like one area, and I don't even know like where that work starts. You know,
right?
I mean? Like, who do you go protest? Who do you call? Who do you like? What is that work? I feel like a lot of that work is done in places that I'm not invited to. You know what I mean? Like,
right, exactly.
A lot of rooms that I'm not aware of, and I think, you know, it's going to be really interesting to watch how that all develops. Yeah, but I think there definitely does need to be more of a focus in that technology, because I think that is how, you know, some of that dystopian shit ends up happening. Is that there, you know, where we are not responsible for ourselves yet, and we are trying to create artificial intelligence. We ain't figured out our natural intelligence yet.
Right.
Like, we still have a lot of work to do on our own natural intelligence. We use 10% of our fucking brain, y'all. Like, but we're trying to create we're creating intelligence that's fucking stupid. We're creating intelligence that only uses 10% of its brain. You know what I mean? So I think there are coming revelations around that, and hopefully some folks who like really understand and really like are active on some of that, because that's the real fight.
Right. Yeah, totally. See, I guess that we almost touched on it a little bit, but I did kind of want to get your thoughts on ignorant rap, like, because that's something that I feel like, because it's supposed to be hip hop, supposed to be hop into knowledge. These kids nowadays, like, it's like they're proud to not, like, I've gotten into arguments on Facebook with people who are like, nah, the ignorant shit is better. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Wait.
Yeah. Well, it is, because ignorance is bliss.
Right.
I personally, this is going to be a funny and interesting conversation, because I love ignorant rap. Like, it is like, I was raised on fucking gangster rap, and like the more ratchet, like my playlist around here when no one is here is so ridiculous. And again, I do feel like a lot of it is like, I feel like I'm popping champagne. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm whipping the biggest, nicest car. And I feel like for me personally, again, like, I know myself and I'm self-aware enough to know, like, yo, my emotions are being manipulated by this music, and I appreciate it. But this isn't my reality. This isn't, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not an aggressive kingpin gangster who will take anyone out with an AK if they need to. But mentally, I am, you know what I mean? Like, you know, don't get me wrong. It's dangerous. It's not dangerous for everybody.
Right. That's how I feel about it. It's like fun if you're smart enough to not get.
Yeah. And that's like the question, right? Because I mean, it's easy for us to be like, parents, if you don't want your kids listening to this shit, turn the radio off and don't. But like, it ain't that easy.
Right.
It's 2019. Let's be real about like whose responsibility it is to raise these kids. And again, we're all connected. You know what I mean? So there's some of it that, like, you know, I don't know what the solution is. You know what I mean? Because I don't want little 5-year-old girls hearing this bust down music where it's like they think that twerking is the thing they have to offer the world.
Right.
Like, you know, I want to give them a little bit of a chance. You know what I mean? I want to let them develop before they get introduced to Nicki Minaj. You know, but that's an option for you. Don't get me wrong. She's doing it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like, for a lot
fun
of
is important.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And for a lot of folks, you know, we can even talk a little bit locally and focus locally, where, like, you know, we're in the neighborhood of Oak Park right now. Mozzie comes out of Oak Park.
Right.
Mozzie's music was very violence-based, very gang-related.
Right.
Now, I'll say I met Mozzie. Mozzie's a really nice dude.
Yeah.
Very cool, very calm, very collected. He's not aggressive by nature. You know what I mean? He's telling a lot of stories that he lived through.
Right.
And the P wasn't, you know, there was no Oak Park light a few years ago, you know, before the wave of gentrification came. And like, now I think even like really addressing some of the gentrification that he's seen in the neighborhood. But I think the music did perpetuate some negative images of the neighborhood and the narrative of the neighborhood. I think a lot of the kids here in Oak Park started feeling like, yo, my neighborhood is notoriously known now. Like, people around the country listen to fucking music about Oak Park and how gangster it is out here. Like, so therefore I gotta represent it right. So I gotta follow step A, B, and C. That, like, when you talk to Mozzie or you see Mozzie, like, in these interviews where he gets deep, he didn't want to be in that shit. I mean, it's like a very simple concept that nobody who's actually in the shit wants to be in the shit. You know, it's only people who've never lived in a fucking trap house that want to live in a fucking trap house. That like glorify that shit. You know what I mean? So I think there was some negative effects of his music. My hope is that as he grows, these young people who have latched onto him because of that moment also see that growth, where they see, you know, he also, you know, at the same time that he's putting out this music, the dude kicked lean and like was doing this kick the cup challenge last year where he was asking people to pour out their fucking lean and get off the syrup. Like, that's some healthy ass shit for this community. Like, there's a whole bunch of other folks out there who are telling these kids to do nothing but pick up the fucking syrup. So I think it's important, even looking, like 2 Chainz, like the king of ignorant rap.
Exactly.
I interviewed 2 Chainz one time. I'd done a little bit of research on 2 Chainz to know that since way back before he was 2 Chainz, when he was Titty Boy.
That's right, I forgot.
He was giving out bikes every Christmas in his neighborhood, which is like a cool thing, you know what I mean? But then I asked him about it, And like, I know you did that then. How many bikes did you give away last year?
Right.
And he just starts laughing and is like, you really did your homework. And you could tell that that was something that no one ever fucking asked him about. No
Right.
one talked to him about. He put out a cookbook with his last album, or the album that I was interviewing about, and it was organic. Like, I think it was mostly vegetarian cooking.
Right.
And I was like, yo, do you realize like what you're doing for like folks in the hood who don't have access to healthy eating and healthy like recipes and shit? Like, you're making healthy eating look cool right now. Two
Right.
Chainz. Do you realize how fucking impactful that is? That's like a revolutionary act. Like, do you
Right.
get it? And he was like, nah, man, you just can't eat shit when you're on the road 365 days a year. So I put out a cookbook because these are some of my favorite recipes. I just want to do it for me. I didn't know. You know what I mean? So
Right.
there's a lot more. Like, and the blame shouldn't be on these rappers.
Right.
The blame should not fucking be on these rappers.
Right.
Because when you see Mozzie in the Sway interview, you find out like who this kid really is, what he's really about. He's got a positive ass message behind him too.
Right.
2 Chainz, the same thing. They're all of these motherfuckers are almost the same. Every one of these kids who they're perpetuating as thugs and as criminals, as vandals. Like, you can even look at, like, I mean, to go to a full ass extreme, 6ix9ine. I
Right.
watched that dude go into a fucking school and just hand out bread. And like, at a school that he went to, so he knew the kids weren't doing that well, hands out money to them, hands out money to the teachers, hands out
Right.
money to the school itself, and it's funding some shit like that. So there's all this positive shit going on.
Right.
The labels, number one, aren't pushing any of that shit out.
Right.
You make a fucking positive song, they'll bury it on the fucking album.
Right.
It's not the single. It's not, you know,
Right.
like, unless they have a marketing plan for it and it's gonna make them $1 million, like I or the Happy song that Pharrell did.
Right.
You know, like, but those have full on campaigns behind them to be
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And why is that so necessary? Because it's hard to find. Can you
Right.
give me a good fucking radio song that's about loving your own goddamn life? Like,
Right.
it's not a thing that people really make songs about now,
Right.
because the labels have been fucking canning those songs and those artists for so long in hip hop that it didn't, you know, if we get people riled up on some aggressive shit, then they need more to fuel that aggressive
Right.
shit. They can't just sit and chill. They need more turn up music. They
Right.
need more drug music. They need more, like, they got people addicted. And it's the labels and not necessarily the artists, and more so than like the ignorant shit is like this. They push like escapism culture,
Right.
you know, and it's like, you know, I don't have a problem with anyone coming up and being like, yo, this is either my own story or someone else's story, some story that I saw, and this is the reality that's going on around here, versus like, you know, just telling kids to get fucked up and run.
Right.
You know, I also think that there's this new generation is wild. I went to, it was summed up for me. I went to Rock the Bells, must have been like 2011, something like that. And it was TDE, so Kendrick Lamar and Schoolboy and Absol and the whole crew came out that year. A$AP Rocky came out that year, and Kid Cudi headlined that year. Rock the Bells had always been Wu-Tang, De La Soul, Slick Rick, like that era of like golden era. Never got too gangster. Like Ice Cube was the most gangster that it got, and like people forgave that because it's NWA, you know. And this certain year, it was wild because A$AP Rocky came on, and within 3 minutes, I'd never seen a fight at Rock the Bells at all. Within like 3 minutes of him being on stage, there was a fight, like feet from me. And I was like, okay, this is that new generation. Like they just announced their presence. They are here to fuck shit up. Like, and then I watched Cudi that night, and I just noticed that again, escapism culture, one of my favorites, but escapism culture. Do some drugs, smoke some weed, take some acid, be out of your head, man. Like, and the message there was shit is fucked up. So it was like, yo, we literally have this new generation coming in with two schools of thought in hip hop, and that's shit is fucked up and fuck shit up. So we have two options right now. Like the like lesser of two evils is just the admittance that shit is fucked up. And then for us older heads, that means we got to admit that we had them some fucked up shit. You know, like so this new generation, that's like where they are. And then that being said, I went and saw A$AP Rocky when he came to Golden One Center, and this new album is called The Injured Generation. And in the middle of the show, these two kids are fighting in the mosh pit. He stopped the whole show, brought both of them up on stage, like made them like dap it out, and like we're like, yo,
Right.
we're all in the ASAP Rocky fam. We're all ASAP fam right now. Like
Right.
y'all don't need to be fighting over this shit. Some young man was getting escorted out by security. He damn near stopped the entire show in order to get that one kid pulled back and was like, security, that ain't what we doing tonight.
Right.
Like, so you really seeing even the evolution of some of these like quote unquote ignorant rappers
Right.
that are like understanding and starting to come into their own impact and realize, because a lot of these folks were young. A lot of this ignorant rap movement, it ain't 25-year-old rappers that are getting picked up. Like they're picking up 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. I don't listen to shit that a 17-year-old kid gotta fucking say.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like as far as advice on my own life and how to live.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you giving them a mic to tell people how to live, and these people didn't think critically enough to be like, yo, that's a 17-year-old kid.
Right.
Would I ask a 17-year-old for advice?
Right.
Not on shit.
Right.
Not on women. Not on paying my rent. Not on nothing. Because they don't know shit. At 17, I didn't know shit.
Right.
You know? So it's exploitation. I mean, you look at Bobby Shmurda. Like these record executives watched this young man jump on a table and fucking tap dance it out for him, like dry snitching on his fucking self. And they said, yo, let's run with that. Like, y'all the reason that young man is in jail. You the reason he's locked up. You the reason, you know what I mean? Like, and that's not to say he doesn't deserve it. Clearly, he like did some foul shit. But like, that's what y'all look for. That's what, like, none of y'all pulled that kid aside and were like, yo, caught a body about a week ago. Right. What the fuck you mean, bro? You out here killing people? Like, maybe we don't put that energy out into the streets. You know what I mean? Like, but they don't, period.
Right.
You know, like it's really all about an almighty dollar to a lot of these labels. But that's what's dope too, is like within that paradigm shift comes like media is going the way of the dinosaur, like traditional media. Like newspapers are going to be first to go, but you're going to watch cable news go too. Right. You're going to watch all of the, like, we don't need y'all anymore. We can create our own media, and we can find media that we like and that we feel is representative of us, which is as dangerous and as it is beautiful. You know what I mean? Where it's like everyone can create a full-on echo chamber around themselves right now and be like, no, I'm totally right. Yeah, every source that I go to tells me I am completely right on all of these opinions I have. Right. You know, and that's not manifestation. You know what I mean? Like that's not choosing where to put your focus. You know what I mean? Like that's creating a fucking echo chamber. Right. And that's one of the most dangerous things I think we can do as a society trying to build. You know, that's why it's important that the old heads talk to the young heads. Right. And that's why it's important that the young heads talk to the old heads. Right. And learn a little bit about the game. I mean, there was a full-on interview with Tekashi 6ix9ine and Fat Joe, where Fat Joe was literally like, look, when I was coming up rapping, the feds were watching me. Why? Because they watch rappers. Like, that's a fucking thing that they do. Like, they will gather information. I'm telling you, as someone who had it happen, I'm telling you, they're watching you right now, B. Right now. Cameras on you right now. I'm just warning you. You don't fucking pay attention. Right. You know what I mean? Like, and it's that sort of like, you know, because there's no rapport. There's no, like, where the fuck was Fat Joe when Tekashi 6ix9ine was coming up? Right. When Tekashi 6ix9ine was coming up and he had his first Billboard hit, Fat Joe was over in his house complaining about how the kid with the Skittles hair and the fucking Skittles grill to match, with calling him all kinds of shit. You know what I mean? That's borderline like homophobic. He's not even gay, but they like, that's where old heads were taking shit. Oh, you dress funny. I don't fuck around with this rap. I can't fuck with these rap kids. They dress funny. What? Okay. I mean, you could have been like trying to help dude. You could have been like pointing him in the right direction, being like, yo, the hair is fucking wild. And the fact the grill matches is like a little bit extra for me, but like, yo, here's the thing. You know what I mean? Like, you could have offered some help. You could have, you know, like, you could have had a conversation, but you were just hating. So there's no rapport. So when you're going to tell somebody that you got this advice, well, fuck you and your advice. You know, like, why would I want to take advice from elders that just been shitting on me? And that's, you know, that's part of the disconnection between the youth and the elders, and everyone needing to understand their role in that. One of my elders is 76. and an original member of the Wailers. And there's not like a more like heavy opinion in all of music in my life, period. And the other day I was talking to him and he said, um, the elders will tell you what didn't work. That's what we're good for. The elders will tell you what didn't work. If you want new ideas, go to the youth,
Right.
talk to the kids. So, you know, and that's my elder telling me that.
Right.
So that means I am listening to nobody younger than him that don't have that kind of accolade. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I think that's, you know, that key to utopia is us understanding. You know, we ask the elders what, you know, like, yo, we got this new idea. The youth got this new idea. Can we run it by the elders so that they can tell us where it's not going to work? They can tell us where they tried this tactic and that shit didn't work. Or, yo, this is why it didn't. Yo, when you protest, they're going to meet you out in the streets with this. Right. Okay, then let's come ready for that. Right. You know? So, yeah, it's everybody being connected, everybody having that mutual respect and that understanding that everyone has value. Everyone has value. And that goes for, you know, when we're trying to create change. Someone asked me about internet activism a while ago and was like, how do you feel? And they were waiting for me to like shit on it because I've been known to be out in the streets. I've been known to be doing some physical 3D world shit. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna shit on that. They're necessary. They're agitating. Mm-hmm. The same way that like right now I'm not really like I'm on some love shit. I'm not even really on some protest shit right now. I don't see the real benefit in it for me personally. But there are people that it's a benefit to personally. There are folks who feel better when they go march it out and go yell at some cops. Right. And if that's what you do to feel better, then by all means do it, because these motherfucking cops need to get yelled at. You know what I mean? Like what you're doing is just like everyone it takes all of it. If this cop is getting yelled at and then his daughter is getting shut down on Facebook because of him, and then some, like, then we can see some change. We're hitting from all angles. You can't just, it's like in any fight, right? If you look at a boxing match, like you can't just throw body shots. It's hard to win that way. Right. If you're just throwing a jab the whole time, it's hard to win that way. If you throw haymakers the whole time, they're gonna know and be able to predict that shit. Mm-hmm. You're gonna get knocked out. Mm-hmm. You know, so it does take everyone. You know, that includes that love role. I mean, that includes, like, you know, the healers that are out there that are more important now than they've ever been. And the healers know it's okay for them to be healers. Right. You ain't got to get pushed into all of this extra shit. Right. If you're here to heal and you're a healer and you're called to heal, then you just worry about healing. You just focus on that. You let people who are going to fight. And you let those people get wounded, and then you heal, because that's what you do. Because when they get hurt, they're going to need healing. So know that it's okay for you to just be a healer. You don't have to be a warrior and a healer. That shit don't work. If we send our fucking healers out to the front line to get killed, then we don't got nobody to heal us. Right. So for real, like, yeah, that part.
Yeah, this movement for social justice takes all types for sure, because the system's just got a hammer, and we got all types, you know, like that's part of counter hegemony, you know, like we gotta be a more thorough thing than what we're fighting against. Like
they got a hammer and we got all the nails. Really, like what y'all trying to build. You know what I mean? You can't build anything without us. Right. So we might as well work with you to figure out what the fuck we're all gonna build. Right. You know? Because I mean, clearly, like, there needs to be a system in the way that we need a hammer. Right. You know what I mean? But like we're all gonna have to figure out what to build together. Right. Otherwise, you're just a hammer and we just some nails, and nothing gets fucking built. You know? And that's not the nature of the universe. Mm-hmm. It won't survive like that, and humanity will just wither off, you know? Right. Which is all right too. Like the infinite beings, I'll catch you on another planet or something. Wherever I show up next. Right.
Yeah, because one of my things about politics is that I found in talking to like everybody is, for most people, is that like no matter how different our views are on various things, like at the end of the day, like most of what we want is in common. Like it's most of the disagreements I feel in general in culture and politics are about means, you know, like about tactics. Like
How are we gonna get there?
yeah, like how we're gonna get to a place where we all feel fulfilled with our lives, and you know, like feel like we're able to do and be who we want to be, and you know, like not have these like you know unnecessary limitations on us. And so you know, I feel like the cops feel the same way. You know, they just have a different you know different perspective. They've learned they've just had different life experiences that led them to believe that the way to make the world better is to catch the bad guys, and they are just misinformed about who the bad guys are.
Yeah. I mean, everybody feels like they're on the right side, right? Like,
Right.
You only fight for it if you thought you were on the wrong side.
Yeah, like just recently, my fiance is her dad's a cop, and I just recently had to had to go to dinner with them and do the whole get the blessing thing, and it was like it's a real hard thing. I got an anarchy tattoo, like it was like but she was just like, just focus on the things you guys have in common, like that, because in my instinct is to be like, oh no, the cops we're not on the same team, but like there is a thread there that we can like that Chris Hedges talks about how every successful revolution has to convert the enforcement arm of the state. So like so we can't be completely antagonistic to the cops and the military, because we have to win them to our side ideologically. And so their instinct is to see us as the bad guy, like for trying to change the system. So like we have to figure out some kind of way to like show them that we're not trying to destroy civilization, that we're trying to move it to a better state than it's at now.
Right. Yeah, it's a wild one. I'm still like figuring out how I feel about all of that, because I have very anti-cop roots. I have very anti-authority roots, and some of these things in my book are unforgivable. I mean, the murder of Stephon Clark is unforgivable. Like that, I'm at a loss for words for how the fuck people can even be still on the force, not locked the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you should have been locked up the first fucking night. They should have been like, I don't comprehend some of that, but at the same point, my highest self does understand that we are all connected. Again, like I said, me and my enemies are connected. So how can I act from a place of love and still stand in line with the people that I'm working to represent and that I want to stand on as an ally to? It's interesting. I have a lot of conversations about this because of my own personal, like, it's an immediate knee jerk to like, I had, when we started the intersection is a wild gathering that happened on a street corner every Monday for about a year. And when we started it, there were over 500 people who RSVP'd to the first one. The city's cultural director got a hold of it and hit me up and said, the police would like to talk to you. To which I informed her, I don't fucking talk to police. And then I was telling that story to my executive director, who was like, Andrew, love you. You're doing a community event. Community safety is a thing. You have to address this. You have to work with folks. So I reached back out to the city cultural director and I said, what do y'all want? So we just wanted to know, how many folks you really thought were going to be out there, and like what was going to. I say, you know what? I'm going to invite you guys. Tell the police specifically that they are invited to come out to the intersection. My personal request, if they are going to come out, number one, do not have your hands on your guns as you approach. That like fucks up a whole energy, and I know it's not like protocol for y'all to have to do that. Like not walking the beat, you know what I mean? Number two, I would like if y'all brought a piece and contributed a poem or rap or something. And I know for a fact that they have an officer on the beat who raps, because he's been through Soul. He's been to my open mics. Israel Graham, like shout out to him, because he, like, Israel knows my family and shit. Like every time I see Israel, he asks me how my dad is. He asks me how my mom's is. He's a cop. Like I literally, earlier this year, he brought his daughter to Plugged to perform. His 18-year-old daughter who never really performed. He brought her to my open mic. because he knows it's a safe space.
Right.
And I had to pull him into the studio. I pulled him aside and I said, yo, I need to apologize to you. Like, I'm out here talking about this unconditional love, but I've hella let your badge be a condition on my love.
Right.
And you've never been, like, personally, you've never been anything but loving to me.
Right.
But because of who you, like, I deleted you off Facebook.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, Lord knows what you saw come through your timeline from me while we were friends. Like, you know, and that ain't love. You know what I mean? So I'm fucking a work in progress, as we all are. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not to say that I magically that night was like, I forgive the system for everything. No, fuck this fucking system. And the whole like the being that it is that he's a part of. Yes, fuck that. That shit is still wrong. That shit is still evil.
Right.
But this man, this person, is a man. He has a heart beating inside of his chest.
Right.
You know what I mean? Therefore, we are connected, and I need to love. You know what I mean? Like, so it's still, like I said, I just had someone ask me the other day about coming to talk to some cops about something, and I was like, I don't fuck with cops like that. I got a lot of growing to do. Period. We'll go into that for a while, but I'll just leave it at that. I got some growing to do, as I think we all do.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I guess that's. I feel like that's one of the things that art can do is can penetrate some of that. Like that, you know, I can imagine, you know, hearing a poem by a cop would be a transformational experience for me. I don't really know what they, you know, like talk about fear. Like their whole job is fear. Like they're every corner they turn around. Like my house got raided in college, and I had this whole, you know, we're building this whole thing on me, surveilling me for months. And so after that, that was real traumatizing for me. Like, and so anytime I would see a fucking security guard with a fucking logo, you know, a logo that looked like a badge on their shit, I'd be like on this fucking crazy high alert. I'm not breaking any laws, but I'm just like, this fool could fucking ruin my life on a moment's notice. Right. They got a government approval to do so. And so like, it took me a long time of working through that, of like, just those little, you know, 1 minute 5-second interactions with cops. And each time when they didn't, you know, destroy my life, I was like, okay, maybe not every person in a uniform is trying to obliterate me or what. Right. But like there was a years where I felt that way, and I can only imagine that's how Black people feel all the time with every cop. Like,
well, it's like dehumanization on everyone's fucking part. Right. You know what I mean? Like there's dehumanization of the cops by us, the same way that there is of us by the cops, and unfortunately, like, the darker complexion you have, the more it exists.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I feel like art can do, it doesn't have seems like it has the capacity to penetrate through some of that shit. Like, especially when it's like not about violence. Like I too enjoy the fun of a lot of that shit that is, you know, objectively toxic, but fun, like, to listen to. But I feel like I can imagine, like, I don't know what I'm trying to get at here. Basically, just like the idea of hip hop evolving through first the Stop the Violence movement, and then the gangster movement, and then the Just About Money movement. And I can feel it. I can feel this thing of just rapping about how much money you got. I can feel it almost being played out or something.
It's getting there. I
can feel it like moving, maybe on the verge of evolving to something where we're talking about the beauty of our love for each other and the good things in the world and the fun that we have.
And that, I mean, you look and it exists now. You know what I mean? Like there's some of these folks like coming right now. Like I'm like, yo, like these little star seeds that are just getting here are really on some shit.
Right.
And I think you're gonna see that evolution, like, because I mean it's the same. It's almost cyclical. You know what I mean? Because they're saying, you think about the gold Dookie chains and all of that shit. Like that's decades ago, you know what I mean? And like coming back and get back into materialism, then we're gonna get back into the lyricism for a minute, and then like, you know. So I think there's just that nature, and then as like people evolve, then just the concepts and we need a new soundtrack. There's a lot of people trying to keep us on the same soundtrack that we've been on in order to stop like progress. Where I feel like once it's just acknowledged that like fuck, sure is progressing, then folks are going to be allowed to just like create the soundtrack to that. As an artist, that's what I'm trying to do. You know, like the album that I'm working on is documenting the whole journey of self-love, basically, like in non-linear terms, and then doing it over a fucking 808.
Right.
You know, where like people can relate to like they're fucking with the beat and saying yes and giving you that yes before you even open your mouth to say something. They're agreeing with you and accepting it, and that's the power of hip hop. That's the power of those drums. Like that's African drums right there,
Right.
where like you're already saying yes. Your head nodding. You're already in approval. You're tapped in. Like you.
Right.
So you're just in a space of acceptance. So whatever someone's saying to you, they could be saying bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks, and you're like, yeah,
Right.
that's goddamn right. Like spiritually, that's what you're doing with that head nod and that connection with the music. And I think there's a lot more awareness being built around, because like, I mean, when you're creating a fucking painting, you gotta like you gotta be like, oh, I think this color would look good there. And the only way you find out that it doesn't is by putting it up there and being like, oh shit, that was the wrong choice. I'm gonna have to figure out how to cover that up. You know, so I think it's the same like with the music, where we're like, yo, we know that we have this power and we can cast these spells, so we're gonna cast some fucking gangster ass, rebellious ass spells. Oh, turns out that has an impact that we don't necessarily like.
Right.
So, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. And I mean, that may take 20 years, 30 years. But I think it is coming, and it is a process for sure.
And I feel like there's a big, like, you know, I feel like there's finally movement on mass incarceration too. Like there's like progressive, you know, there's like public defenders getting elected to DA, like in some places around the country, and so, like enacting for real progressive, you know, anti-mass incarceration, you know, policy frameworks that where they're like, you want to lock this dude up for 20 years, you got to justify spending a teacher's salary on that.
Right. I think it's most exciting because, you know, when you talk to these youngsters now, I got like 12-year-old kids that can explain the school to prison pipeline.
Right.
Which is wild, because I was like in the heart of the school to prison pipeline in continuation school, and had no idea. Like I knew I was in a system. I knew I didn't like. I knew it wasn't working for me. You know, I was frustrated by it, but I didn't have words for it. I didn't know what it was. And again, it's like, you know, I think my generation helped to like build some of those words or those ideas through that frustration. But I think the generation after me, our little brothers and sisters, our little cousins, like really put fucking words to that. This new generation put words to all kinds of things. Really, like, yeah, just so like mass incarceration for sure being one of them. The schools not prisons like campaign. That's a major campaign throughout the state of California. I'm sure it's like moving in other states as well. That this is kind of being brought to the forefront of people's minds. And it is all that young generation and their understanding that like of what the fucking system is. Like we were just frustrated by it. They watched us be frustrated by it and then went, oh, that's why you're frustrated. That's where your problem is. That's where the drain's clogged. Like they were able to really pick that apart. And so now seeing them, you know, they don't think the way we think. The analogy I've been using is that, you know, our generation got handed like a hand-me-down toy that our older brothers and sisters had been pretty rough with, and we handed it down to the next generation after being super fucking rough with it, and just basically handed them a broken ass toy. And the next generation underneath us looked at that and was like, what the fuck am I supposed to threw that shit out and like started making their own toy. And we're like, what actually amuses us? Let's make one of those. You know, even in looking at things from gender perspectives, from relational perspectives. They don't think in these binary terms of it's this or it's that. Like there's a lot of space in between this and that things can be. And this new generation is all about like, they're all about that idea, and they're all about giving these things names, these spaces in between names, and like normalizing them, that it's okay to. And it's really like, it's interesting watching the older generation fight against that, because it's so clearly, to me, it so clearly feels like evolution. So clearly feels like You know, we 500 years ago we thought the fucking world was flat.
Right. Right.
There were people who like argued that shit still, like,
Right.
you know. So there's, you know, a lot of room for growth in human thoughts, and to really see the way that these kids break it down, like they've been here before, like they learned,
Right.
like they learned last time they were here,
Right.
what didn't work, you know.
Right.
Got some old souls coming into this plane right now that are doing some real beautiful work to just release a bunch of old paradigms and old ways of viewing things.
Right. Yeah, the generational thing seems like the biggest piece of hope for me, like the biggest factor gives me hope, like, because it seems like they just pick shit up intuitively that we, you know, like, took us a bunch of work to figure out.
Some folks had to go to college to like learn some of this shit that
Right.
these kids like just inherently know about the way the world works. You know?
Right.
It's wild, man. It's wild. These babies got so much to teach us. I remember like 5 years ago or so, I was teaching a poetry class, and I was trying to teach these kids about it was Black History Month. So I'm teaching them about segregation. I'm teaching them about prejudice. I'm teaching them about all these things. I'm trying to like make it make sense to them, and they are having such a hard time grasping why people who look like me didn't want to fuck with people who look like this, right? Like white folks not want. They didn't get it. The concept didn't make sense. It didn't add up to them. They didn't know. They didn't get why. Right. You know, and like I remember being like, no, like you can't like just punch the bus driver for your homie because he's being mean to him. Like, nah, like there's a whole system built into this that you have to be this and you have to be over here. And you imagine if you and you couldn't be friends. And this little kid looked at me and was like, but why though? Like, I like him. So why you like him? He dresses cool. He's got cool shoes. Right. We like the same music. Okay, so y'all like really sincerely out here judging each other on the music you listen to and your shoes more so than like race doesn't make any sense to you. Right. But like this, that, okay, y'all are the fucking future, and I love you. And from now on, I'm just gonna listen to y'all because like even in my young age, it wasn't like in my house. It wasn't. It was very much you love everyone, whether they look like you or not. But it was very clear that other people don't look like you. Right. It was very clear that there are folks who don't look like you. You know what I mean? And I felt like just in that conversation with these kids, like when they met each other on the playground the first time, like they literally looked at each other's shoes and were like, your shits light up, my shits light up. Right. You know what I mean? Like the fact that their skin tones didn't match didn't even factor in. Right. You know? Totally. And so I think it's a good example for all of us, you know. I love this new generation. They came to fuck some shit up. They came to take your milk money. And they ain't gonna apologize for it. Like it's real dope to see. You know, even locally, just watching the movements among the youth, the stands they're taking, the art that they're making. Right. Incredible, man. Incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you find that it's like that they see that they're just natural poets, natural artists? Like
I think there's a part of that for sure. I think every generation kind of has their like natural poets and natural musicians, but I think this generation talks more poetically. Right. Not that they're all poets, you know what I mean, but that they understand things of a poetic nature. Right. When you speak metaphors to these kids, they get it. When you know what I mean, you don't have to teach them how to feel things. They inherently feel. Right. They know how to feel. And they probably know how to feel better than you.
Right. Maybe because the general normative ethos of feelings are bad is lessened or something.
Yeah. And I think that's also like that development of humanity. You know, like you look at culturally, like my grandparents, both of my grandfathers, I'm fucking cry. Are you kidding me? Right. I'm fucking cry. You're a man. Right. My father, to a lesser degree, you know what I mean? Like my pops would cry at a sad ass movie. You know what I mean? Like my pops will get choked up by some shit on TV. Yeah. Now, if we're out in public, it's a little different. Right. You know what I mean? Where I don't give a fuck. Right. Like, I will cry where the fuck ever. Right. I try not to ugly cry in public because that's a little embarrassing. You know what I mean? But but like when some shit emotionally stirs me, like I'm very in touch with that part of myself that like weeps. And like,
Right.
I know that that's healing waters. I know that it's fucking beautiful.
Right.
I know that the fact that I feel shit so much that it makes me cry is fucking beautiful.
Right.
And I would never want to turn that off. Um,
Right.
so, but I think it is that generational learning where, like, you know, I think about years back where, like, I can look at both my grandfathers and be like, man, they were very, like, that masculinity was toxic.
Right.
Yeah, but it wasn't toxic compared to the fucking masculinity of 2 generations before that.
Right.
Like, if this is a steady fucking process, like, you know, my grandfather, like, didn't tell my dad he loved him. You know what I mean? Like, it was
Right.
like there was like a deathbed moment where he put his hand on his heart, and that was, I love you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, where, you know, I was mad as a kid that my pops didn't tell me he loved me enough,
Right.
but he said it, and I
Right.
knew it for sure. You know what I mean? There was never a question. So yeah, it is just that generational growth, and I think that generational healing too, like our traumas that stay in your DNA that come with you. You know, there's like
Mm-hmm.
scientific tests where you see, like, you know, your ancestor had some wild experience, and then
Right.
you have this quote unquote irrational fear of this thing. And it's like, is it really an irrational fear, or is it like generational trauma? So really, like, I think this generation is doing a lot of healing on that generational trauma. I tell people before, I've cried tears that my grandfathers couldn't cry. I've cried tears that all of my grandparents couldn't cry. And I knew at the time that it wasn't like it was weird because it wasn't me. It wasn't. That's where I feel like a lot of this depression comes from, and a lot of this is a lot of generational healing. It's also a long line of, like, so whatever it is that you have is very heavy right now,
Right.
like and then we move into this new space and this new vibration in the universe, and it's stirring all of this heaviness up to where, again, it just plays into that. Are you up or down? Are you, which way are you magnetizing? Like, and so I think it's important for people to do that and to know that. And I feel like this young generation coming up, the ones that started with the smartphones, like that were raised with that, fucking 3-year-olds that know how to work a smartphone, those kids right there, that that's like they're kind of cognitive, that like, yo, we have to clear these generational lines. We have to clear these DNA lines of all this shit. Otherwise, we're not gonna make it. Like, it's too heavy, it's too much. And that's why this generation has like come, is to like clear those DNA lines. Like, and I hope that's not like too mystic or woo woo for some listeners, but I mean, then again, I also don't give a fuck if it is. So
Right.
this is my reality, and
Right.
you create your own reality, and that's utopia. So.
Right, exactly. It's funny because I was in my head, I was trying to because I tend to translate shit into material terms, and there is epigenetic science, and so it's, when you say the phrase clear some of these DNA lines, I think that's what epigenetics is, a series of on and off switches where we can turn off genes that we adapted to various ancestral traumas. So
Absolutely,
that's a fucking real thing. Like,
absolutely. Well, I mean, and I feel like there's a lot that's just like not known to or
right,
understood by the human mind. That like a lot of what people think is woo woo, you know,
right.
which is my favorite term. Like, someone be like, "You on that woo woo shit right now," but like, there is a scientific basis for a lot of it, and if there isn't yet, there will be.
Right. Exactly.
You know, like, how do you prove the law of attraction? How do you, you know, like some of these fully universal laws that like we haven't necessarily figured out how to document yet, but it's on the way. And I think that, like, well, the reason that we have these hypotheses are because we do inherently know these things.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah.
like I said, I think that new generation, like, their knowings, the knowings that are coming with this new generation, some of these kids, I mean, they're all going to change the world. They are the world. But like, there's something real magic about this next generation and the knowing that they have coming in.
Right.
That, like you said, I think it took a lot of us like till 18, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, like
right.
still going.
Right.
That these kids like kind of come out the womb understanding like what this plane is, what they're here to do, how they all fit together, how they're all connected.
our parents had midlife crises, we had quarter life crises, and the kids nowadays they're figuring that shit out with like 5.
Yeah, like 10 years old, they're like, none of this shit matters, fully existential crises, like, you know, and it's good. Fuck, do that shit at 10 and then have the rest of your life to like be cool and have made peace with it and figured it out. Like,
yeah, I remember 10 years ago when people talking about like, oh no, the kids are gonna, you know, like when the iPad first came out and everybody's freaking out about, oh, babies are using these iPads and who knows what they're gonna get into. I remember thinking immediately like, nah, these kids are gonna figure some shit out having that in their hands already.
Yeah, I mean I feel like that's like fucking space age technology for real. You know what I mean? Like that's some fucking Star Trek shit that I like. It's weird because like if you missed the announcement and the commercialization of the iPad,
right,
and you just showed up the day that it came out, you'd be like, "What the fuck is this magical screen?"
right.
Like that, like literally when I was a kid, all I wanted was a magical screen that could take me anywhere and do anything, and like that's what the fuck these things are now. Like I can visit anywhere in the world. I can learn about anything. I can make music. I can make movies. I can play games. I can do like anything literally that I want to do. I can do on this magical fucking screen. Like that's all I wanted. And I mean, I think it's dope because I think generations like, you know, especially with toys. I've always noticed this with toys. Like if you look back at the 50s, the toys were kind of jank. You know what I mean? Like, and then the next generation, the toys that those people made were so fucking fresh compared to like that's when like RC cars started to come out and like motorized shit and all these dope ass toys because these people before them didn't have shit to play with.
Right.
So it was like my generation that was like, I want this magical screen. We gotta make this magical screen happen. How do I make this magical screen? And like a few of us never let go of that shit. And then here you go. You know what I mean? Like, so the next generation grows up with that thing. Now, what the fuck is next?
Right.
That's where I'm like, yo, when I'm like, I hope that I do make it to be 60 or 70 because I want to see the generation that would be my grandkids. Like, what are they going to give their kids?
Right.
These little 2-year-olds right now in 35 years. What kind of fucking toy are they gonna have for their kids? Full ass holograms, full ass virtual reality worlds that they create, put the goggles on, and you make everything that like that shit's not far away. That shit's within the next 5 years.
Right. Yep.
So add 30 to that.
Right. Exactly.
I want to see the technology that makes me like my grandparents were with the internet.
Right.
Where they're just like, this is too much. I don't really understand this. This is fucking crazy. I don't think we should have ever manipulated technology this far. This might be the end of the universe.
Right.
I want that. I want to see that part come.
Yeah, totally.
I want to be like terrified of it and have to call every young person I know and be like, how do I do the thing?
Right.
Yeah. I'm excited for that part of life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a big part of what pulled me out of the despair I was in 2013, 2014 is just like discovering the exponential acceleration of technology and being like, oh shit, it's going to be like so dope that we can't even fathom it right now at some point 10, 20, 30 years out. Like, I'm going to stick around for that.
Yeah. The hoverboards are coming, y'all. Like, for real.
Right.
For real.
Straight up.
They're already here. They have them. We don't have them yet.
Right.
It'll be another 30, 40 years before we finish.
Right.
I just hope I'm like, because like I just want to be old enough to ride around on a fucking hoverboard.
Yeah.
I don't care if I break a hip. I don't care if that's how I go out. In fact, I hope it is.
Right.
I hope it is. I hope I go out in a terrible hoverboarding accident.
Yeah, when I drive around in San Francisco all the time, and I see people on these longboards that are like the same like general design and shape at least the deck is to the longboard I used to skate on in college. So when I used to skate everywhere, but I remember being so tired pushing. These people aren't even pushing it; they just got a button in their hand. They're just riding a skate like it was a button in their hand that makes it go.
Yep. Got one big wheel. You just stand on the thing and it drives you where you want to go. You don't even have to like lean in to the turns or anything. Like, yeah, that's wild. Oh, you work uphill.
Yeah. Right. I see people going up these fucking 45-degree hills in San Francisco on a one-wheel thing. They're just chilling.
Yeah. It's wild. And I mean, thinking about like, even just like from my dad's age to my age, my dad talks about skating. Like he had a skate, but they didn't have ball bearings. You know what I mean? Like, shit was like metal wheels and shit, like,
Right.
you know. So to get from there to this like motorized one-wheeled contraption that can go up a hill, like that's wild. I can't even imagine where it's going.
Right. Hoverboard's definitely the next step in that category.
Yeah, I feel like
I think you're right.
I feel like it definitely is. We'll get there soon.
Mm-hmm.
We are carting the way to that utopia.
Hell yeah. All right, well, how about 2 more questions?
Sure, let's do it.
So I've noticed on Facebook you use the hashtag the Great Joy Hunt 2019.
Yeah, that's some shit.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that.
Man, I really like a lot of the work that I did on myself in the last year really pointed to the fact that as a human, like my purpose here on this plane and all of our purposes is to find joy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's really what I'm trying to concentrate on this year. Every day I try to find something to be joyful for, a source of joy. And it can be little things. I got into a Lyft ride and someone was playing one of my ratchet ass soundtrack songs. And it was like the one that I was really hype on at that moment. So it was like it was playing my soundtrack as soon as I got into the car, and I was like, oh, that's some divine shit. Like I'm real joyful for that right now. So it can be like really, really small things. It can be giant things. You know, I recently got my name printed in Playboy magazine. That was part of the Great Joy Hunt. You know, so I just feel like, again, it's part of that, like trying to keep that focus and those goggles on. My homie Rashawn just put out a thing, a little workshop series, and part of it was on joy goggles, like putting your joy goggles on and finding the joy. And it really has been like shifted my entire thinking, because when I'm doing that more purposefully on certain things, it means I do it more naturally on non-natural positive things for me. Right. So when some negative shit happens to me, I'm a lot less inclined to be like, man, fuck this, fuck my life right now, this is awful. Like, and I'm more inclined to be like, well, I guess if that happens, then this could happen out of it, or, you know. And then like part of putting that on social media is like, just, I feel like there's so much negativity that gets put out and people vent and use it as like Dear Diary on Facebook, which isn't a bad thing. You know what I mean? Everybody got a vent. It's a big part of the social consciousness. But I do feel like there's a lack of positive things and affirmations and that sort of thing. So I do try to stay real positive with like what I'm putting out. Like I don't necessarily tell you like the great defeat of 2019. You know what I mean? Like there've been some of those. There've been some days where it sucks. You know what I mean? There's some days where I'm in physical pain, or I have a medical issue, or, you know, like just whatever is going on that day. But stay focused on the joy and the positivity. And I think that does help you just stay in a little better alignment with your highest self. And that helps, and it just bleeds into patterns of life.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Hunt that joy, y'all. It's out there. It's hunting you too. That's the crazy thing.
Right. Mm-hmm. I guess to conclude, I kind of want to start this thing of asking each of my guests just like a 1-paragraph outline of utopia as you see it, like the most important aspects of a society that's worth trying to work towards.
Equity-based. I think that's the biggest thing I fight for right now. So I think that's a cornerstone. Equity is the cornerstone, creativity as a catalyst, lack of scarcity, which I think is possible for sure. And love. At the center of all of it, there has to be love. Because if you love, then you won't stand for inequity. If you love, then you don't stand for injustice. So, you know, love definitely in the center of everything. That's what any of the great teachers talking about. You know, is one of those universal, whatever religion you believe in, wherever your faith and your highest power is, like love, man. So to answer your question more directly, to give you a paragraph synopsis: love, 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 love. End of paragraph.
Oh yeah, perfect, man. Thank you so much for joining me, because that you got mad wisdom, man. It's encouraging to me to know that you're out there spreading that to the kids, because the world needs it. And anybody else out there He's got it right on that paragraph.
I'm gonna make that my bio.
Hell yeah.
I'm a press kit from now on. No, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad you're doing this work. You know, a lot of times people only go surface level. They want to know about the art or the creative process or something like that. But this is a real dig. And I'm one of those people. I love those conversations. Like, you'll catch me outside the bar drunk at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, and I'm still having those same conversations wherever I can find them. So yeah, thanks for having me on, and good luck with the rest of the podcast.
Oh yeah, thank you. So what day of the week is that? Is March 3rd? Because you got an album coming out
I do
in a couple of weeks.
I do have an album coming out. Yeah, that's a Friday night at the Blue Lamp, March 8th. I will definitely be rapping a lot about self-care and evolution and love, except for the beats like fucking slap. So you're, you know, in for a little treat. And yeah, I'll be outside talking that shit. Probably a little bit drunk off of ZF Jesus. That's how we do it.
Hell yeah. So when this episode drops, the album will be live. So
Ultraviolet, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, everywhere music is sold. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Andru Defeye, ANDRU DEFEY.
Set them city lights so blind you if you let them, man. Set them city lights so blind you if you let them. So now we good, but we seem bad, living out all the dreams we had when I was sleeping on these streets and the stars always just out of reach. Now we grab out a handful, cause time run fast, and it's more than an ass, and it's more than the cash. Leaving a legacy to last. That black bandana rap sack quarterback back in effect like I never left. Wrote the map, never lost. Made the music, paid the cost. Perfected the art of imperfections and learned to embrace the flaws. But them city lights will blind you if you let them, man. Said them city lights will blind you if you let them. So blind you if you let them, man. Set them city lights so blind you if you let them. Trust me, I know, gain the world but almost lost my soul. They say they want love but they want control. I just want these seeds to grow, and if it ain't enough like they won't. And if you dim me out then I don't. So low I go, so rogue on microphones. They hire drones to fly in my zone. 360 degrees, and we do it so easily, cause it ain't nothing but a rap song. And I know that all along, why we call it CFG. We the